Welcome back, geometry students. Now we're going to talk about arc length, which is to not be confused with arc measure. Arc measure deals with the degrees of rotation of an arc, which is measured in degrees, whereas arc length is a distance. It's the actual distance if you walked the path of the arc from one point to the next. And distance is measured in units such as meters or inches or miles. Okay, so I'm going to actually calculate an arc length first, and then we'll write up a generalized formula after we've gone through one example. So in example A, I want to find the distance from A to B. So if you started at A and you walked that path, I want to know the total distance of that walk. So to do this, the first thing we actually need to calculate is the circumference of the circle. I need to know how far around is it from one point to the next on this entire circle. So we know how to find circumference of a circle. Circumference equals 2 times pi times the radius. So 2 times pi times the radius, looks like the radius here is 12. So 2 times pi times 12 simplifies to 24 pi. So 24 pi is the distance if you walked around the entire circle. Well, the thing is, I don't want to walk around the entire circle. I want this portion of the circle. I want that slice of the pie of the circle. So what we're going to do is we have to figure out a way to figure out how much this arc takes up on the entire circle. And to do that, we have an important measure on the circle. If I traveled all the way around the center of the circle, that degree measure would be 360 degrees. However, our arc only takes up 45 of those degrees. So what we can do is build this fraction that has the arc measure of our arc, so the measure of the central angle, over 360 degrees of the entire circle. So we're saying our arc takes up 45 parts out of 360 parts of that circle. So if I multiply my circumference by that fraction, I'm going to take the entire circumference and just calculate 45 out of 360 parts of that circle, which that's how many parts are taken up by this arc right here. So I'm going to pull up my calculator to do that. I'm going to avoid my mental math on that one. And to do this calculation, we can start by taking 45, dividing it by 360. So 45 divided by 360 gives us 1/8. And then we want 1/8, and if you didn't recognize that as 1/8, you could just multiply this by 24. Or you could think, what's 1/8 of 24? In that scenario would be 3. So the total arc length would be 3 pi. Again, 45 divided by 360 times 24 produces that value of 3, and we want to write this result in terms of pi. And we'll call this just units for the distance. So to generalize that formula for any arc length, we want to take the circumference of the circle, which is 2 times pi times the radius, could also be written as pi times the diameter, if you wanted to, whichever form you prefer. And then we're going to multiply that by the portion that the arc takes up on the circumference. And to calculate that, we're simply going to do the arc measure of the arc you're trying to find the length of, divided by 360. Again, 2 times pi times the radius is all the way around the circle. This is how much of the circle your arc will consume.